just use the hashtag freshly press 981 for us to easily track your messages. On YouTube, we're at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Make sure you please subscribe to our channel so you know whenever we come online, you get a little notification. And on WhatsApp, send us your message to 0809 4440981.
All right, so Kemi said first story is yours. I'm going to come to you with this one from the Guardian newspaper. Government gets ultimatum to account for $5 billion Abacha loot. The Socioeconomic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has asked the federal government to disclose within 7 days. Now, that's 7 days, the exact amount of public funds stolen by former military head of state, General Sani Abacha, and details of spending of the loot of about $5 billion of the loot reportedly recovered since the return to democracy in 1999. It followed a 2-day Freedom of Information request sent on Friday. They've got 7 days. SERAP say that they're concerned that the allegations of corruption and mismanagement involving the use of Abacha may be responsible for the increasing level of grand corruption over the years. So this brings a big question of accountability.
Indeed. So we've had a situation where, since the return to democracy, successive generations of Nigerian governments have, with a certain level of regularity, announced the fact that they've got a so amount, mostly from Switzerland, but you've also had recoveries from the UK and recently this year from the British dependency of Jersey. It does beg the question as to how much we've had so far. So, per a Reuters count from as of 2013, we had recovered about 1.3 billion dollars. I was just looking at the numbers, and since then we've had a couple of announcements in 2014, in 2016, last year, and if you recall earlier this month, an agreement that we signed with the UK, the United States, and the dependency of Jersey to have $321 million repatriated. When you do look at the numbers, though, you find some discrepancies. So, for example, in 2014, our then Finance Minister Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala said that was only $500 million been recovered. Which does not sit well with the 2013 Reuters count. So it does beg the question as to figure out the exact number. You have a situation where, for example, the special advisor to President Buhari on social investments, the former Chief Justice, the former Justice of the Supreme Court, Miriam Lawal Ways, said that the monies that so far, as at September 2019, $103 million have been dispersed towards the government's various social investment programs out of Abacha loans. Then begs the question, what happens to the rest of the money? So it does make sense to have a formal process that clearly defines how much we've had and how much we've spent and what we've spent it on. So in that regard, this FOI request by SERAP is very, 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 very important.
Who's responsible for? Who's responsible for actually tracking the projects that these monies have been used for?
Well, hopefully it will be the federal government. And so there hasn't been a formal and well-defined mechanism towards monitoring and evaluating how the government has used it, which is what raised the concerns by SERAP, right? Which informed they are filing the FOI request to actually understand what's going on. So we would want to hope that it's someone's job within the federal government to actually track those numbers, given our historic penchant to not care about those things and such wonderful concepts of accountability.
Any ideas on how previous tranches collected?
Well, so you have a situation where Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala said, for example, that the $500 million that she could account for were used to do community projects, which I don't understand what that means. That's saying anything.
To say that you can't
find it.
Exactly. However, in 2007, the then Finance Minister Nadi Usman said we had gotten $2.5 billion and we had used it to invest in such things as power, works, health, education. So the numbers are all over the place, right? In 2007, someone is saying $2.5 billion. In 2014, we have a minister who says that we've recovered $500 million. In 2013, the journalists who nominally have it as their job to track the numbers say we've recovered only 1.3 billion, and the entire size of the kit is supposed to be 5 billion. So
the only question I have to ask is, it's all well and good that SERAP they're going to, under the FOI request that it's made known. What will happen if they don't make it known? So they've said that after 7 days, then they'll go through the legal process. But even if they find them guilty, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I just want to understand, because we get all this no, I don't want to call it noise, but headline stories. It gets us excited. Then nothing happens. They come out and like what you're saying. Oh well, we spend the money on community projects. What will the people actually do?
Not much.
Well, I can only speak as to the legal process. So, per the Freedom of Information Act, if after 7 days a government agency has not substantially answered to a request, either saying it has this information and here it is, or it has this information but for national security reasons we can't release,
Oh, really?
or it does not have this, it can make that.
Well, okay,
You can
freedom
go
of
to the court to
information,
challenge
yeah,
it, but that's
but
another thing.
yeah.
But within 7 days you have to reply. If you don't reply, you can actually apply to the court to compel them to respond.
Security wouldn't apply here. I mean, because the real concern is that Abacha loot is being relooted, to be honest. And in my opinion, the only reason why we hear about this is because these are funds that are coming in from abroad. So obviously, foreign news agencies will pick them up, or else it would be hush hush.
Exactly. Moses Umaru says the issue is not the amount of the loot or other matters. This monies represent the infrastructure that we would have been enjoying today. The future was stolen by the former leaders. That's the lesson. Let's make sure the future of our children is protected by blocking leakages today. And then Goki from the UK says former Boko Haram members rehabilitated. And all right, so we haven't yet touched on that. Goki, but we'll go there. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's move on now. I'm coming to you today because on this one, let's talk TED Fund. This is an exclusive from the Premium Times News. TED Fund's conference attendance sponsorship for Nigerian lecturers over corrupt practices. I bet you already know what kind of practices. The Tertiary Education Trust Fund has suspended sponsorship of conference attendance for Nigerian lecturers over alleged allegations of fraudulent practices by many of its beneficiaries. They allege that these beneficiaries are in the habit of perhaps maybe even requesting for these funds and not attending these. Some of them get these funds and then they switch in without proper documentation. These people are supposed to, bring back most of this knowledge and impact the youth or whoever it is that need this kind of education. But Big Coops, what do you think?
Okay, yeah. So lecturers, Nigerian lecturers, and our academic group and society as a whole is much misaligned, to be honest, and for very good, for clear and obvious reasons. There's a lot of anyhowness, as I like to describe it, Nigerian anyhowness behavior. You take funds, you get funding for one purpose and don't put it to that purpose. So you say, I'm going to attend this function and you don't attend it, or you don't follow processes, and when you switch institutions. But even that anyhowness is a reflection of the wider society. I mean, generally, there's a lot of misbehavior that goes on, and people don't see the need to follow the process. But I'd also like to look at it from another angle. To be honest, like I said, taking a lot of stake for many different reasons. But it is one of the direct fallouts of the first story, the looting and corruption, funding, and proper focus generally. The consequence of that is now we talk about it, we focus on the brain drain, the one that's happening now with a lot of people migrating to Canada and places. And why that stands out is that in the past, where before we exported people who possibly mostly struggle to make it here, now we're exporting people who are well established as well and are good in their jobs. But the first tranche of people to start doing this were actually our lecturers. Right, well educated, they were in the system and in the country, supposedly supposed to be educating the next generation. But their working conditions are so bad that most of them left or have affiliations attaching to universities abroad and only coming to Nigeria once in a while. They're visiting professors here and there. So that was all of that is because that sector had been starved, as many other sectors in the country. As someone who's in many ways firsthand has come from a family of people in West. As a lecturer, it's difficult people to live on the incomes they were poor. The incomes were ridiculous, and they were rarely constant.
And this is where I was actually going now. Is a chicken or egg situation that comes first? Is it that situation or the environment that these lecturers have to deal with is so bad that they have to resort to these practices, or that it's just an orientation type thing? Which one do you tend to first?
It's a bit of everything, but I think it is these conditions.
Poor conditions.
These guys are poor conditions. these guys, and we all know what they have to do. They have to make these ridiculous handouts, poor quality, and insist that if you attend their classes, you must buy them. It's not. It's driven out of need and necessity.
Is
Now,
it,
if you
Tunde,
give someone,
is it all need and necessity? For some, it's pure greed.
It would seem.
it would seem.
Just bad behavior.
It would seem, but yes, there's. I've acknowledged that there's bad behavior and greed in there, right? But then you create the environment for it. What have they said, or what are the accusations? And this is the piece that I want to go to. If someone can't eat, it's the same thing. We can put the same analogy to our police force, right? If you give someone 10,000 naira, right, and you say this is your income, and then you leave him in charge of a budget of 100 million, please, what do you expect? Really, what do you expect? Pay them properly. Let them feel dignified in their jobs and in their labor, and then potentially the vast majority won't tend to corruption and theft. But you can't leave someone in a condition where he can't meet basic needs. What are the decisions that they're spending these grants on? On cars, on houses, essential things, on food. That's what's in there. That's it.
Cars.
You gotta get around
Mobility.
You get around. Would you like to see your? You didn't say type of luxury cars. Yeah, I'm not talking about this now. We're saying cars. And again, someone firsthand. You're not. Please tell me which lecturer, Nigerian lecturer that's working, would you find with a luxury car? Some can afford it, but mostly can't.
About this, but let's just read this message real quick.
Shegun says, when lecturers are this dubious and also reject EPs, students look at them and copy their deeds. This is why we are where
They're
we
rejecting
are.
EPs because those guys, they need those double salary. The EPs is part of the complaint is that, look, people say to highlight the fact that these guys are working in multiple institutions. Why do you think they work in multiple institutions? Let's think about it now. When people talk about stories of poverty and say, oh, my mom had to work multiple jobs, or my dad had to work multiple jobs, it's the same thing.
Make ends meet.
I'm wondering why you didn't just become a trader yourself.
I saw it close up, guys, and nah.
I actually wanted to be.
It was not pretty.
I actually liked the. All right, let's move on now, and still on you because power sector loses $19.1 billion in 10 days. This is from the Punch newspaper, and those 10 days are centered around Valentine's Day. There's lots of detail about how many billions we lost from the 8th of February to the 14th of February, especially the 14th of February. The nation's power sector lost an estimated 19.15 billion naira in 10 days due to constraints from insufficient gas supply, distribution and transmission infrastructure. Apparently, most of the power that we make is from gas, and this is in short supply. The nation generates the bulk of its electricity from gas-fired power plants, while output from hydropower plants make up to about only just 30%. So the question I have in mind is whether it's possible to even recover from this situation that we find ourselves losing all of this and not even providing as much power as we need as a nation, since the gaps that were created during the transition into the privatization era.
Yeah, I mean, that again, it's a lack of funding. It's a lack of focus and attention, and generally also reflection of the decades of inefficiency and corruption that's happened in that space. And our power sector is so comatose that even usually when you transfer things from public hands into private hands, natural efficiencies just sort of kick in. But the power sector hasn't followed that path for a number of reasons. One is the extent and level of decay that existed and the infrastructure that the private guys have had to take over, and then also the structural things around the economics of it not making sense around the price is regulated, and it's at a rate that the operators say it's difficult for them to turn a profit. There are many different issues as to how to turn this around. Now, the gas supply, if I recall correctly, within this arrangement is the duty or responsibility of the federal government. That's the federal government's part to this, and we've experienced many different gas disruptions. This is just one of the latest, and now someone has said, you know what, which is another thing that we do, we never count the cost and we don't count the numbers, right? There's so many things that we don't count the cost of. Someone has done the analysis and said, because gas was unavailable from this time to that time, and you have installed capacity of X amount, because that capacity couldn't do anything, if it had been doing stuff, this is how much you would have earned. But because it was doing nothing, this is consequently how much we can estimate that we've lost. It's like having a workforce, and you have a factory and you've got nothing for them to do, or you've got no power and they're sitting and they're twiddling their thumbs. Meanwhile, you still need to pay them. It's it's like that. It's just loss of income.
Can I say, was there ever has there ever been a survey into what the government's focus is on renewable energy, maybe for wind?
See, okay, that's
Short answer is no. So you can break that down.
No, I mean, you remember Fashola, there's been a lot of talk about renewables.
Yes.
Yeah, so the commission projects in the north, they've all sorts of things. They've brought in all sorts of, big private global partners. We still live in water projects. We haven't seen that come to
I'm relating
fruition.
this to the whole telecoms situation where it was just simple, switch this off and switch that on. We had private investors and all, and it was beautiful.
Well,
Boom. Can't we do that for power?
It's a little
PhD,
different.
switch on
It's
renewable energy, private investors.
It's a little different. First off, the field of renewable energy is still developing, and it's developing rather rapidly. Telecoms is a slightly more stable sector and field that has been in play
But
for a
what
while.
the water sector in
Yeah.
general? Yeah.
But now I'm looking at the wide. Let's look at the wider power sector. I mean, this may not be popular to everyone, but we have huge amounts of coal.
True. But no real way.
Not sexy.
But no, yeah, exactly. Huge amounts of coal, but no way to deliver that coal
Many
to where
issues
it's
around
required.
transportation.
We're building. I'm sure we'll probably even still have the same challenges with coal that we have with gas.
With gas, we
transporting it to
definitely
where it's required. But what about building power plants at locations and sources where it is closer to these coal mines or closer to gas? So one is strategy, but when politics enter this thing, that the gas plants must be in my neighborhood.
So
it
key
must be in
difference
my
is
area.
entrenched interest.
Yes.
Right? Entrenched
Yeah.
interest.
In those areas. But
Political
I would honestly, so renewables is great, but I mean, I'd like us to maybe be slightly selfish and maybe look at what China did, right? It's only now that they're beginning to put commitments down to cut back, but China drives a lot of its industrialization on coal, right?
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Tunde, and thanks for raising that conversation around renewable energy. Sometimes we don't even want to talk about certain things because we believe, let's forget about it. It probably would never work. All right, let's move on to our next story, Chemistit, and I'll go on to an update on what's going on in Bayelsa. And that is that the APC have now written to INEC demanding fresh governorship election in Bayelsa from the Vanguard newspaper. Last week when we took this story, we actually discussed the issue that the court had directed that the PDP candidate be sworn in as governor. However, there was that argument of what the constitution stipulates, which is that there must be a percentage, which he didn't quite achieve, despite him coming second in elections. Please take us through the story, and what do you think, from a legal perspective, are there chances of actually getting this through?
Oh, the legal perspective is not sexy. On the political side of things, it's a little interesting to me that this matter originated at the Federal High Court. Yep, at the Federal High Court, the APC won, right?
Yeah.
The PDP took it up to the Court of Appeal, and no, I think I have that skill though. Yes, so the PDP won at the lower court, the APC won at the Court of Appeal, and the PDP eventually won at the Supreme Court. There's this slight quirk in electoral law, not really the Constitution, but the Electoral Act 2010 as amended, where there are certain scenarios that leads to certain predetermined outcomes.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So if in a pre-election matter, right, the candidates or the governorship ticket of one political party, right, that is contesting the election is ab initio faulty, right, in law. The law presumes that for the intents and purposes of that election, that party did not participate in the election. So the other party that has the next highest number of votes automatically wins the elections.
Alright,
There
so
are
let me
other
just break
predetermined
it down
outcomes that
to-
lead to, say, a rerun election, for
Yes.
example, right? Yeah, but this is not one of those situations, even though that geographic spread of votes was absent, right, in
Alright.
the PDP's
So let me break it down to Bayelsa.
APC is adjudged to not have participated in this election
Indeed.
because
Yes.
of the fact that the deputy governor, the
team,
candidate,
it's a
the
joint
team,
ticket.
yeah,
Yeah.
the joint ticket, wasn't had. There were some discrepancies in the certificate he presented. So
Specifically in the names inscribed on the
Yes.
certificates that he presented,
Presented.
which makes it doubly more challenging because for people, if you look at the names, they are broadly similar enough that
Yes.
you can't say that they do not identify another person. So you can't say these two certificates belong to the two persons. I had a situation where in one certificate, the short form of the deputy governor's name was used,
Yeah.
and then in his NYC certificate, that one I remember, the full form of his first name, which I should point out here, was only different by one letter, literally one alphabet.
It's all anyhowness.
Right?
It's not
Yeah,
about anyhow.
indeed, right?
If you're on official documents, spell your pick one and stick to it.
And stick to it. And if he knew it
Some
was
people
going to
don't
be a
realize that.
challenge, if he didn't get proper legal advice, it's something he ought to have highlighted or pointed out in the process of his election. Unfortunately, it's too late for that.
Okay, well, so the APC's argument was that he swore an affidavit to the effect that all of those names actually belonged to him,
Supreme
and
Court
that should have
doesn't think
sufficient. The Supreme Court essentially said, it's not enough. You can, I mean, everyone who's probably listening has had an experience at a court registry where you went to swear to an affidavit, depose to an affidavit for any reason. You can literally go there and say A, B, C, D, E is my reality, and nobody challenges it,
So
and you
the
pay
Supreme
a
Court
token
doesn't
fee,
even
and it's out.
the Supreme Court
So it's
doesn't
not
even
enough.
believe in the court system or changing
Yes,
names.
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah,
Because
for no reason.
exactly that. I'm just quickly give an example of countries that don't do anyhow. There's a friend who won the visa lottery, right? But it was filled for him. Was filled as a family, and they put the wrong. They didn't get the name wrong. They just put the wrong date of birth. Like maybe you're born on the 14th. They said 13th. The US said no, it's someone else. We can't give it to you. It's somebody else.
It's a material fact.
It's a material
It's a
fact.
material fact.
This
24 hours is a long time.
difference. Yeah, I mean, it's someone else. It's not
Yeah.
you.
I mean,
But
someone
you
else
don't
with your
say,
exact
everything
same
is the
particulars
same
could be
name,
born.
And I
everything.
think this is very instructive to our listeners, and I know it goes without saying, but there are certain documents that we just bypass because they missed a letter, and they will understand. But when you see the consequence at such a level, then we understand that you don't take it for granted.
Yeah,
But can I
okay.
also say that this is also a drawback to our field system in curating documents in Nigeria,
Yes.
where it's
Yeah,
all
yeah.
manual.
Yes.
Because there's so many places I've had such issues as well.
Yeah.
My last name is Ofo, but people keep spelling it with an R as Ofo instead of Ofo. So I've had to correct that many places.
times.
But it's a centralized system where perhaps maybe our national identification card, when everything
Things
else
pull
is
up your
linked up,
records
Yeah.
a bit more.
When
that would be,
Simplicity.
that
When
would
I
be fair.
did my change of name for my passport when I got married, they
A very difficult process.
Always, difficult.
Very.
And then, even though I gave them my certificate,
They'll spell
they
it the way
still
they want
got
to.
the name wrong. So people always mistake for Mario.
Mario.
instead of Myro.
Oh,
Hey.
Myro.
And he put Mario,
Oh, that's
and he
huge.
gave me the passport and said I should take it. I'm like, take what?
This is someone else.
It has a huge impact.
It
This
does.
is not my
It
name.
does.
And if I didn't insist, if I was thinking about the process, the amount of money that was paid, I could have just let it go and thought to myself, since it's just one letter. But this helps us
It'll
to
come back up.
realize
Indeed,
that it
indeed.
will come back.
Mine was the arranging. So what's first, what's in the middle? Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. We move on to our next story. Again, another worrying situation. Fire got Lagos Enugu markets. Tunde, we've had a number of fire incidents in Lagos, incidents in Lagos, and now we know in Enugu market. Just to take us back, in January we had a situation in Balogun market. In the same Balogun market, 5th of November 2019, we had another incident. In Abolegba in January, we had fire incidents. And then in Surulere, November 19, we also had another fire outbreak. It's 5 or so fire outbreaks too many. And it begs the question, what is going on? Why are they happening in the first place, and what could be done?
Way too many. It's a regular occurrence. I don't know how many people are familiar with these markets and how the stalls are set up. We all remember Tejusho as well.
Yeah.
Back in the day,
Back in the day, that one got burnt literally
Every single day.
Yeah.
just something happening. It was either a big fire or a small fire, but there was something else going on. But you look at the reasons why, so it's easy for people to say that some of these markets, is sort of sprung up almost like shanties, totally uncoordinated and unstructured. But that's why I mentioned Tejusho at the old Tejusho, right? But even that complex became a jungle because fixed maximum number of set of sea, but then they exceeded that in every single corner, right? So not only are these markets tested, but under the same you find all types and all sorts of products, materials, right? Even if you put that aside, then the fact that there is no power or inconsistent power means that to run your store and your shop, you find people going in there with their generators. I think that's when the small 1 kVA face my face
Really became
generators
popular.
became popular because people needed them in there. That would mean that there's petrol going into these confined and tiny spaces. It means the owners need to store the petrol somewhere. There's just too many reasons.
I'll give you one more. The fact
Instances.
that with all of this mayhem you've just highlighted, that there is no infrastructure for in case fire
If
should
fire,
break out.
exactly,
There's
if there
no
was,
water,
I mean,
there's
you
no hose,
remember exactly.
no
That's the final.
pathway
That's
to
the
find
final
a way
bit.
through.
No water to deal with anything. Even evacuating people. Remember, I said that there's
Yes.
stalls on the stairway.
Yes.
It will take up 80% of the walkway in the corridors and on the stairs. So how do you quickly evacuate people? And then some of them even cook within.
Oh, they got it.
Within,
They
because
have to eat.
They can't leave their stores. Remember, right? So all of this points to many different layers. I mean, the first of is remodeling, and the market people generally hate to hear that. Hate to hear one because it causes disruptions to their business. One because the remodeling exercise and process it takes forever, sometimes longer than a year. And then when it's finally ready, it's at a price point that they can't afford.
Yes.
This has happened to them
Queuing
over. Yeah.
the new Tej
This
ratio, for
happens to them
example.
over and over again.
Yeah.
So we really need to look at these things and change and modernize, and do it at a point that the government should take this on and do it at a point that the marketers and the market people can afford.
All right, real
Thank
quick,
you.
the chemist said, Daily Times newspaper, take us through the story. Insecurity, presidency lacks power to stop protests. We're almost out of time. Let's make it quick.
All right. So Femi Falana, the famed human rights lawyer, essentially reminded the president that there is a Supreme Court decision from 2008 that says you cannot fetter the right and the ability of Nigerians to protest. So it was in response to the presidency saying on Sunday that it has gotten wind of plans by people to protest against the track record of the armed forces in tackling insecurity in the country, and the saboteurs and the unpatriotic and yada yada yada, queuing all of various synonyms that are attached to treasonous behavior. Falana reminded them that there was a protest in Abuja last week by people who support the military's efforts to tackle insecurity in this country. And there was no problem with that at all. So why should we have a problem with the converse happening? That's basically the gist of the story.
Freedom of speech, freedom of expression, I guess.
Thank you very much. Henry Okaro from Agos says we need to educate people more on the name arrangement and the importance of it. More people can't tell what is their first name and last name. Maybe we should use the term surname more often than last name. Thank you very much for that one. And then Olufemi asks a very interesting question. He says, if the candidate for deputy governor in Bayelsa State was disqualified because of discrepancies in his certificate, why was Buhari not disqualified for the same reason?
If you ask me,
That was one. That was
Them, but, Cooks, how can they conversations with you?
Big groups onto that.
Oh, well, Sunday you are at
there you go.
Big groups onto that.
and the chemist said,
George Ike with a J.
so my name is Mr.
We know what you did right there.
Lagos, stay tuned. We are Smooth. This is Smooth Breakfast.
I wanted to get to some information.
Yeah, same. It's like
Share
so
it
please.
on YouTube.
Yeah, but because it feels like economic magic he wants to perform.
No, it's not. Well, there's no magic in there because he doesn't how. He talks
But
about.
Emefiele rarely states.
Men's agency heads.
Okay.
Emefiele seeks structures to insulate the economy from all shocks. Yeah.
So now, right. To insulate, how do you insulate the economy? It's diversify, right? So it's nothing new. They're just bringing a new word in there to say we're trying to insulate the economy from oil. But to do that, we need to diversify the economy.
More important, we need to diversify
the government income.
the revenue.
Right,
Yeah,
so, yes,
government income.
revenue. So
Yeah.
the economy is diversified in many ways.
Indeed.
Yeah, but I
was gonna say that.
it's government earning that isn't. And I'll say one thing to highlight that. You know, we like to think, but numbers don't show it. I mean, numbers are changing. We like to think that Nigeria is an oil-producing country.
Yeah.
It's an analogy, right? Or not even an analogy. This is what the data shows. Oil receipts. I mean, income from oil. I think, last year, or the year before, the last time I looked at it was at about 18.9 billion
USD.
USD. Remittance FX, that's FX coming into the international
Project.
remittance coming into the country,
Yeah.
was at 23 billion USD. So that begs the question: are we an oil-producing country, or are we a human capital producing country?
That happens to have oil.
Well,
fair-
because it's now you see all the people
Yeah.
who've gone to Canada,
Yeah.
who've gone to Austria, who've gone to Germany, who've gone to Australia.
Let's just export
They
people.
are holding the country. They're
That's
literally-
actually our biggest
they're literally-
export. Our
they're
export is
literally
human
propping the
talent.
country up.
Asian countries, that's what they do now. You
Yeah.
have all these, what they call them, call centers and
Indeed.
customer care.
Yeah.
Yes, the situation in India.
In India.
Yeah.
But you
They're
know, you're
providing
talking
service
to,
for
you're
the
talking to-
HSBC's
I wish,
call
I
center.
wish,
Exactly.
I wish we
Let's
would
do
provide
it.
an enabling environment for that, because imagine the amount of jobs it would give to
Yeah,
Nigeria.
yeah.
I mean,
We don't. Number one,
Yeah.
we've talked about the fact that we don't have an enabling environment for investment and businesses like this. India has power, and China has power. They have their governor or president who one day wake up and decide to change, an existing agreement, or decide that he's not going to honor a contract because it's no longer his term. So that's even a way. But back to your point, Tunde, I totally agree with regards to the fact that perhaps we put a lot of overemphasize on oil.
The importance of oil.
On the importance of oil, because what you're saying is that human capital is actually one of our
to Asians for a company based in the US.
In the US, imagine that.
So they had something that they did with their IP address and
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
It was actually illegal.
Yeah.
So I
But,
think they
hey,
clamped down
got you,
on and then they
got you.
closed down company. But that it was possible.
It was possible.
Yes.
It is
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah,
So
it is.
how about going about it the legal way, getting a registered company and everything, saying yes, we're Nigerian, but we can provide this service.
But
I
you
mean,
see,
we have-
Oh,
That's-
I,
but you see,
I
that's
actually know someone who's doing that. Who's doing that in Lagos? Like
Nobody
literally,
killed- nobody
that
killed the IP
is
address
no,
yet.
no, 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 no. The IP address is fine. They've got certification from the UK. They train Nigerians in English diction and customer service, and those Nigerians go ahead to train via the internet Asians who want to improve their English speaking skills.
Yeah.
So you have a situation where we are in the perfect position. We are in the same time zone with Europe.
Yes,
We're not
exactly.
far enough from North America. We're not far enough from Asia.
Yeah,
We're
right,
very
right,
central.
middle, yeah.
We're English speaking. We learn in English.
we speak
And
better
if we-
English than even Americans.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so if we work on the infrastructure, right, we can actually become one of the outsourcing capitals of the world.
Again, it's one of those
Yeah.
where it's the private sector and private people who are just like driving this. What about the government thinking? But too much focus is placed on oil.
And we're not
So
on
it's-
oil, on
it's
agriculture.
So when we say, okay, how do we
easy money.
harness this, for instance? One way we can harness is all the examples that you said, like make the country. People didn't just start going to India to maybe get call center
Call
staff
centers,
and help their staff.
Yeah.
It's because they opened up the country and they saw it as an opportunity and they leveraged it for foreign companies to come and do that. So we can. Point being is that oil isn't the only thing or the main thing propping us up.
Yes, I agree.
Remittances
Remittances,
are holding us
Nigerians.
up way more than oil. Yes, you can say that there's a lot of corruption maybe going on in the oil sector, and maybe not all the monies that are coming in are being recorded, but for remittance to even rival that was eye-opening for me. So when Emefiele talks about insulating the economy is insulated. It's government earning an income that is not.
Yeah.
And they need to do that a lot more. They need to do that better by putting proper and additional focus on all these other sectors that we can make money from. But Emefiele doesn't see anything about how. He just says what the problem is and
That's
says the
for
fact
many-
that
many
we are very exposed to oil. True. We all know that. We've known that for years. Question is,
What are we going to
about
do?
it?
Thank you for tuning in to Freshly Pressed Extra.
He does talk about credit and the
Yeah.
LDR. He claims he wants to claim credit on that one, and maybe they have some on the lending.
Yeah, but for me,
deposit ratio.
but for
So
me,
it's making the commercial banks come into that space, but that space had already started growing. with a
growing
lot of
without
private-
the CBS intervention.
Yeah,
And also for me, the real concern for that
And hopefully
isn't in the fact that the financial institutions are able to lend to the real sector, is about the credit risk